Good day. I'm Father Robert Christo. It's a pleasure to be in this webinar today. Truly a pleasure in this new beginning ministry and family life unit at Saparia or La Divina Pastora in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm happy to be here. I'm just not happy with the topic. A real serious topic. It's, I think, one of the most difficult, the hardest call you ask me to do, to talk on forgiveness. It is so humanly impossible, if not totally impossible. And I know a lot of you are tuned in today. I welcome all of you who are listening in. I know your couples, divorcee, those who are widowed, those who are separating, those who are separating, who are planning to separate at this moment, and those who are preparing for marriage. But I just want to include quickly, I think this topic is for any human being that breathes, because forgiveness, we have a capacity to forgive and to be forgiven. I don't think animals have, and I don't think plants have. But because of our divine spark and who we are, made in the image of likeness of God, who is mercy, who is Hesed, whose very nature is forgiveness, we are also called to be in His image and to be evangelists, to forgive. Just as He says in the Our Father, forgive us our trespasses, Lord, as we forgive those. So basically, we are pleading, we are begging God, Lord, I beg you, can you please forgive me? Have mercy on me. Treat me better than the way I treat others. So there's a correlation between our capacity to forgive and our willingness to. There's a correlation to the way and number of times God has forgiven us and who we should forgive others in spite of the quantity and the quality of that forgiveness from the offender. We are called. It is, I want to suggest, the most difficult presentation you can ask any human being to do, because it's very difficult, impossible for anyone to do, first and foremost, without God's grace. That's why very clearly, in John chapter 13, Peter asked, Peter knew about it, Peter's a man around town, Peter was impetuous. Peter asked God, Lord, how many times must I forgive? 7? And 7 is biblical. 7 is about 7 sacraments, 7 days. God took in completion and fullness to create the world. 7 in fullness. So Jesus Peter thought rather, he would have said, well, yes, as much as you can. And Jesus says, no, Peter, you forgive 70 times 7, almost 77. Meaning, I ask you to forgive always, limitless, infinitely, infinite times. It is complete. I can't tell you, you are just called to forgive. Whoa. It's not like the Old Testament. I've come to fulfill that. Because right after they massacred me innocently on a cross, first words I resurrected with was peace. It was a forgiving God, a forgiving word. So you have to imitate me if you call and you're crafted and you are geared into my very being. You call yourself, we Christians, you have to be an ambassador of forgiveness. It is not dependent on the victim or the offender. It's just a difficult goal. Everybody needs to be forgiven because all of us have been hurt. There is no human being in this world who have not been hurt. Everybody needs to forgive somebody, I think, and everybody needs to be forgiven by somebody. And not so much a quantity, how many times. Jesus says at the end, He says, Peter, you must forgive from your heart, from your belly, because there's a correlation in the willingness to forgive and the capacity that you have. There's a correlation in what you have received from me and what I am calling you to do now, for your sake. It is not for the other's sake only. It's for your sake. The forgiveness is not based on whether the other person reciprocates. It's not based whether the other person is alive. The person is based on you. It is based on you doing something to free yourself. Be taking and grabbing and focusing into the very divine nature of a God who is forgiveness and grabbing that grace. G.K. Chesterton says, Roman Catholics have a great gift. Their sins are forgiven by Jesus. We believe it in the I confess. We believe it in the sacrament of reconciliation. So we are called to forgive every single person in spite of, despite of. And that's a very difficult call. He says you must do it 70 times 7, which is completion, limitless, always, completely, perfectly. And it's not based on number, quantity, qualitatively, from the heart. It has to come from your belly. You'll know when you forgive somebody, when you wish the best for them, when you wish salvation for them. You don't have to be with them. You don't have to like them. You have to love them. It says love your enemy. There are ways you can plan to treat them from far. You can plan to discontinue a relationship. You can plan to not to be with them, depending on nature. But you must wish the best for them. That's a criterion. to know if you've forgiven them. You want nothing bad to happen to them. You want salvation for them. You will help if you can, but you have to be very prudent. So church and people of God, I really want to thank you to let you know that the unforgiveness, if you stay in that zone, it festers cancerous cells. It breaks up the alkaline metabolism in your body, and you have to be very, it brings sickness, physiological sickness, it robs you of grace, it cripples, goodness, it burdens us, it blinds us, it blocks us. So if there's any living person on this earth who will rob you of your well-being, is that person worth it? Sometimes the person gone their way, they're going happy to die or wherever. Sometimes you have to press on the email and press send and say, I forgive you. Sometimes you have to do something tangible. Sometimes you have to go to the cemetery and write a letter. Because you're carrying unforgiveness that cripples grace and goodness, blighting ourselves, blocking and creating cancerous activity, and literally eating ourselves away when we mine in. Sometimes that's all we do, mine unforgiveness. We have to free ourselves, and freedom for us. There's an old saying, sometimes you're in a room and you're spitefully blocking out the sun with the blind. But you are in the room, so you block the sun and you rob yourself of the sun too. Is it worth it? So you build a grave to bury your enemy, and you and your enemy get buried. For what? There's nothing in it. There's no life in it. Very, very important. Unforgiveness festers. And sometimes you even hide it from your own memory. You think, I'm alright, I'm lie. Not alright. You have hidden it, we have hidden it from our own memory. There's a call, you have to find ways, you have to find steps for forgiveness and healing. Not for the person's sake or the other person's sake necessarily. It's for you and your freedom. For me and my freedom, so that the light could come in for me, and if the other person gets that's fine. It's for me. Scripture is very clear. There are 3 scriptural references I want to present for us to meditate on today. The book of Ecclesiastes, Sirach says, vengeance and resentment are evil and foul things, but we sinners cling to it, hold to it, we cherish it, we nurse it, we taught it, we mine it, in my language, in our language. And the vengeance of God will come upon us. Those who exact vengeance on others will suffer vengeance from God. Basically, what you exact out is what will come back to you. The mercy we met out to others is what God will measure back unto us. Think about it. Is it worth it? It is for me. It is for my revelation. You free yourself and the other person. Ecclesiastes tells us very clearly. Stop. Forgiveness is not for the other. It does not depend on the other. It's our pathway to heaven. It is more for us and our freedom, right? And makes us cancer free, mentally and physically. In the gospel, in chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus had to give him a parable to see it from a different level perspective. Because we don't, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Isaiah says, your ways, my ways are not. You can't see it. I am a very essence is forgiveness. And you say you're Christian, you're grafted to me, yet you act differently. You're not a Christian then. He says clearly, you have gotten your debt forgiven 100-fold. And you're going on the road, I just forgive you. And somebody have to give you a little small blind and ask him, would you please forgive me? Just how you have been forgiven from the master. You say, no, I want my stuff. Jesus says, I will exact it on you. There is a correlation in how much and why God forgives and how we must do to the other. There's, blessed are those who forgive, for they shall be forgiven. There's a correlation in our capacity to forgive in the same way God has also forgiven us so many times from his very being. St. Paul says clearly, the letter to Romans chapter 14, if you live for God. If you die for God and his purpose. Basically what he's saying, you have to make a shift, a conscious. This is not about me. My life is not my own. I don't exist for me and my own gratification and my own vengeance. I exist for God, to be under God and under God's purpose. And if you're under God and you're under God's purpose, you're under the whole regime of forgiveness and mercy, who he is. Our lives are not our own. It's a gift. And if we make that shift, because gift must be given away, you have to get that conscious shift that we are in a whole adventurous, divine, joyful mission of forgiveness. That's his pathway. That's a pathway to heaven. That's a pathway to good living. That's a pathway to good well-being. I was reading a book the other day, iGen, And it says a lot of us are heaven bound and earthly rotten because we are not mature Christians. We get big and we old and we have kids and we have grandchildren and we have widowed and we are separating and we are getting married, but we are still babies spiritually. And there's a sense of maturity, ritualism that must take place. We have to mature spiritually, and this is the first step of really a concrete way of seeing if we are really Christians. And we must teach our children too, because we too, though we are children spiritually, have to teach our children. And the 5 things, and you can put it up on your screensaver. The first thing is, life is hard. Life is hard. Why make it harder? Secondly, we're not all that important. We're important, but not all that important. The world doesn't revolve around you. You tell your kids, you make your kids, and you give them everything and say, I'm giving them everything that I never had. Be careful. Let them understand the gripe and the sacrifice and the pain. Else you're going to have spoiled children. They're going to pitch tantrums, even spiritually. They won't be able to deal with the trauma and the drama of forgiveness and unforgiveness in the real world. Thirdly, you are not in control. There is a divine cosmos. The animals and the plants can't forgive. I'm giving you. You share my very path. Finally, you will die. I went to London and they told me, Father, the only thing I remember you say because you speak so fastly. You were dead. And this hinders to see God's face. Your life is not about your own. You live under God, and whether you live or you die, belong to this God. So this kind of spiritual maturity is what we have to move towards to be a true Christian. And we too must also, I implore all of us, teach our children that 5-step. Life is hard. You're not all that important. You're not the center of the universe. You are not in control. You will die. This comes to an end like a bubble. And your life is not about you. When we get that, we can say we are in a real spiritual realm that is journeying towards a mature Christian. Forgiveness is not for the weak. It's not for human. It's not for the ego. And justice is really divine, as I said at the very beginning. It's coming from a divine call, coming from a divine grace, from a divine higher power, coming from forgiveness and commandment. He's commanding. It's not an option. He's saying, forgive, I command you, and love your enemy. I would not leave without giving you some examples. There are a lot of people in my life I had to forgive. When I was 7 years of age, I was going to church. I loved church. I will never leave this church. And a woman was going to church with a mantle and she spat on me. I never understood it. Why she's having vengeance, as Ecclesiastes is saying. You know, you hold vengeance and bitterness. Because there was some family squabble with land. I was 7 years, I wasn't involved. And I said, Mommy, why is she coming to church, sitting on the bench and going to church? I couldn't make a correlation between a mature Christian and this kind of resentment and vengeance and bitterness and anger in the church. I didn't connect it. And my mother said, one day you'll be a big boy. I said, big? And I got big enough to be a priest. And she called me in a dying moment to celebrate the sacrament of the anointing. At that moment I had to forgive. Not for her too. Maybe she wanted to be released of paradise. But she could have given it to me. And I could have done it. One, it's important for her. There was a monk also once. He's blamed for having a kid. Very, 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 very sad moment. And he had a seed to have the child. And you know what he did? He took the child and claimed it as his own. Because she was lying. She was a teenager and she used him as a scapegoat. You know what happened? At the end, when the child was about 15 years and he had mined the child and got all his scandal, she came back. I want my child. And the mom forgive. Sad. So many years living a lie just for peace. And that teenage girl, when she got older, came back for a child. There are lots of stuff, even in orphanages, that happens. A friend of mine from San Fernando took a son and put him in a garage. And he actually put him down and killed him. She said the same night, I forgive. I forgive them. On his funeral parlor, she says, I forgive them. And that's very important. You know, Amakalate also. She was away from her house in Nigeria or Africa, and they killed her entire family. But when she went back, she had to hide in the house because the soldiers came. Because she went to see her family. She hid under the bed, under the staircase, I think, for almost 2 days, and the soldiers came to kill her. And do you know the fact, you know what happened? She took it, and she says, she screamed to herself, and she prayed, Our Father, forgive us our trespasses as we. She prayed that over and over. She said, Lord, I beg you, help me to forgive the way you have forgiven me. And she told the story. She forgave all those people who killed her entire family. It is a powerful. I want to close with some steps for forgiveness. I know you're excited to know the steps to forgive and the steps to healing. The first thing is to recognize our own sin before our eyes. Don't be self-righteous. The reason why we forgive because we have been forgiven and we are unworthy. That's why Jesus says, for those without sin through the first stone, take out the plank from your own eye before you see the splint in others. Stop having a memory leisure of people's sin. All of us sin differently. So the first step is to recognize we too are fallen from grace. The second step is to get in our belly. Nowhere else. So get it on your fingertips. Get it from your belly. I have been forgiven. So many times. The reason why if God marks our guilt, I can't even wake up in the morning. So I too must forgive. So get it in the belly. The same way I have been forgiven and forgotten by God. I need to do it for somebody else. Thirdly, you have to do something concrete. You have to say it, you have to go to the person, you have to press send, you have to go to the cemetery. That is why at Mass we say, I confess, not we. And you examine your conscience every night to see what we did when we offer ourselves to God again and where we are faltered and make it grown. And when we say to our Father, say it well, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We have to do something concrete. The third thing is we have to decide to do it and do it quickly, do it now. Maybe I will continue the relationship, maybe I have to break it, or maybe I have to be, I don't know what combination to use. You have to make a decision, but you must do it quickly. Scripture says, do not let the sun set on us. Finally, forgive through an act, show it from a heart, show it and release yourself. Pray for the grace. Go to the sacrament of reconciliation. Because forgiveness is for everyone. Everyone deserves to be forgiven. Everybody has been hurt. And that is why Jesus says clearly, it is not an option. It is a command. Forgive 70 times 7, which is full, complete, which is beyond comprehension, beyond humanity. It is divine. I challenge all of us to forgive as we have forgiven. How many times have we ever forgiven? And we need to forgive. I ask you to just bow your heads now and pray with me as we bring that one person we have asked. And bring that person to our conscience, or the persons that we had for our own memory. Because when we forgive, we free ourselves first about me, the burden of revenge and bitterness and anger. Ecclesiastes 27 says we cling to it because sinful people cling, immature Christians cling and tote and but we must free the other person too of the guilt and the burden, and don't take a hold for two. Stop taking holds. But our forgiveness must come from the heart. It's the hardest call of Christian living. It's just a hard topic for today. I love you, I love the webinar, I love the community, but I don't understand it's a very difficult call, commandment. But it must be true, it must be genuine, it must be warm, it must be concrete. A cold forgiveness is not of use just because it must be done. Forgiveness must start from within and start now. Don't let the sun fall on us. Putting it off deepens the bitterness. You're not sure if you survive tonight. Go to the cemetery, send, press send, move, do something. It only prolongs and blocks grace and gives more bitterness and postpone happiness and grace and joy. And you will see in God's face, life's short, time is fleeing. Tomorrow is a gift. Today is the day, now is the moment to forgive. Lord, deliver us from the poison, so much unforgiveness and violence in our country. That's why people we can't see our way. And give us the grace to forgive from the heart. Those who continue to offend us, and it's not for their use only, for their sake, but for our sake. and then we know the warmth of your mercy, who you are, and then and only then we can consider ourselves Christian, a God who is mercy, is forgiveness. I thank you, because everyone needs to be forgiven, deserves to, because every human being has been hurt. We have the capacity as He has forgiven us. It is not human, it is divine, from a divine core. God bless you richly, and thank you so much. You can offer your comments and have some engagements and questions at this moment. God bless you.